Hello, everyone. Welcome to Map Control Episode 7, our Epiclan 26 review. I am Dream, once again joined by the ever so lovely, beautiful, and all the compliments in the world, Michael Cassidy, or as you will all know him, Yumi, obviously biggest Neds fan out there as well. I just want to point that out with Ned's team.
Yeah,
Hashtag
of
fear the
course.
Neds.
Of course. I mean, gotta rep the boys when we're talking about the event that they attended. Obviously, didn't quite do as well as I would have hoped, but
Oh, wow.
that's discussions for later as
Uh,
we're just opening things up.
you always like to get ahead, Yumi. You always like to get
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I'm my mind's racing a mile a minute. I need to sort of bring it back and do a U-turn every now and again.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you did have a good Epic Man 26 if you did attend. Obviously, the event ran over 4 days, tournament starting on the Friday, and a completely new hall for the Epic Land team to get us into as well, which, I mean, for me personally, arriving to that and seeing your pictures on Twitter of that, they should be coming up on your screen now. Unfortunately, Yumi took really bad pictures, so sorry about that. But no, we apologise for the picture quantity. But I was seeing that set up and then getting the lights off and seeing all those computers set up. It was such a cool experience, especially going as a player.
Yeah, I mean, when the idea behind the pictures was sort of like before and after. It wasn't supposed to be critiqued to the harshest extent. Instead, it's being put on full blast. But yeah, as soon as we saw it, like everything getting set up, it was like it's just mad to see the whole land hole filled like to the brim in that regard. And I mean, just I imagine as well in previous epics, if we had this sort of top down view, maybe it would have seemed as grandiose.
Yeah,
But this is just like having that elevated angle and like the super high ceilings. You just added something.
it yeah. I think that would have been, if I was going to cast, it would be my fourth Epic Land as a caster or something like that. Anyway, third event, something like that. And seeing the difference between the halls, it felt more as a player. I don't know how to describe it. It was just such a unique feeling, especially going to the other halls. It felt more like a friendly LAN environment in the previous halls, but this felt like people were coming here to win. This felt like
Yeah.
an Insomnia, for example. And I'm glad they were able to take full use of. Obviously, I believe this is the sports arena. I think it is.
Mhm.
Obviously, where the pictures have been taken from as well, with the balcony, with the where the casting stand was as well. You mean?
Yes. Yeah. I wish I had a picture of what the casting setup was, but it's not quite as cool looking. Let's just put it that way. It's a bit more, more production on like uh activity oriented. So it's it wouldn't have added anything. We didn't have sort of like the backdrop or
Yeah.
any of the sort of like epic branding that we've had in previous streams. This time, because we were over the land hole, we like focused on having the backdrop be the land hole.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I suppose design of the setup for the casting area. Obviously, a lot of thought had gone into this LAN, especially considering this is the first time they're using this hall. They got more, servers into the LAN hall as well coming in, and it was quite scary trying to find your way in there firstly, but this was better signed up, I thought, as well, in terms of where you need to go, where you need to get out of, and stuff like that. I mean, overall, as a LAN, it felt, as a player, it felt really unique going first time. It was a great first LAN to go to. I believe next time at Epic 27, they're going back into the sort of the theatre area above there.
Yeah.
I believe obviously this is a one-time deal, I imagine, to test it out, see how many tickets get sold. And as far as I'm aware, there was only about 20 tickets left in terms of BYOCs. 43 teams attended the CSGO event as well. Seemed like the Rocket League and Rainbow Six had a few other players, a few other teams as well, a decent amount anyway. Rainbow Six seems to have gotten off to a good start as well, which is good news for Epiclan. And obviously, we focus on CSGO a lot here, but Epiclan has a special place in my heart personally for what they've been able to give me as a caster. That event was able to put my portfolio forward completely, and that was great for me. Obviously, I'm not sure if you share the same feelings.
I mean, for probably your first LAN being casted, right, or like attending as a
Yeah,
caster or a player, right? It's the same regard for me, and it's kind of I suppose the point of a lot of these people going to Epic Land for the first time. We had first time casters in Raptros and Dweg as well attend. Me and Jamie more so, but me and him were the veterans of the
yeah,
casting squad, I suppose, which is a bit weird to think about, but it that sort of natural sort of progression that you need to go through is, yeah, it'll always hold a special place just because of that. And like you said, just what it's able to provide as a new either player or a I suppose aspiring talent, as we refer to it as. So
Yeah.
it's a great springboard, and like you said, it's like just such a fantastic sight to be able to see that um, Epiclan are able to grow in this way and still be able to harbor and sort of cultivate the scene surrounding Rocket League and Rainbow Six as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is a great thing in general for the UK because this again means more LAN experience. Some people may not view it that way, but still, it gets you used to a LAN environment. Where I mean, on a larger scale, obviously, than you're going to be used to if you manage to make it to an EPS finals. Obviously, Epic LAN as well. Compared to Epic 25, I believe this would have been. Well, I'm not sure how many teams we had in the Epic 25 tournament, but I can't imagine it would have been more than 32. I
Mm.
think. And obviously, so that meant the biggest event and meant biggest prize pool for the CS:GO event.
I almost remember it being something like 27 or something or rather, because it was a very strange grouping. I remember. Um,
Yes, I think you might be correct. I
yeah, it
think
was
it
like
might have
six
been.
groups of four, and then there was like one group of five, like a few groups of five or something. I can't remember. It was something odd, and I specifically recall the fact that things did not line up properly, and people were not
Yeah,
happy with buys being
that's
accessed.
right. I mean, I'm not sure if it was Epic 25.
It might
I
have been
think
24.
it might have been, yeah. It was one. I think it was Epic 24 was the one I missed, or maybe Epic
Mm.
23 was the one I
You
missed. I
missed you
can't.
missed
One of the
24.
24. And then Epic 23, there was problems again with stuff like seeding, where people like B Magic, obviously a veteran of the scene, been around for who knows how long, since the inception of the UK Counter Strike scene.
Mm.
Obviously, he had to sit down with the admin to basically sort it out, which is not really as a player what you want to be able to do. And obviously, as an admin, it takes a bit of a humbling experience to have to sit down and be told, yeah, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Obviously, again, I want to thank everyone who came up to Yumi or spoke to Yumi or Yumi spoke to about any criticisms or anything like that they had for map control as well. Obviously, this is a learning curve for me and Yumi, more so me. But
I mean, both of us, man.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
we're still, this is still a very sort of new project for everyone, all of us that are involved. And I've had a few people ask as well about getting guests involved, and
Yes.
obviously we that is something that we plan on doing, but we need to it needs to be directed, and we're still in sort of our infancy, I think. So
Yeah, and in terms of guests, this is something we talked about when we started this show. Is something eventually we will want to get to. We've personally felt, obviously, that we need to get a few episodes out first. That we need to get this down personally, make sure that everything is as good as it can be in terms of what we do, what we structure, and obviously getting guests on as well is something we're going to be looking forward to doing because it's always good to pick someone else's brain about the scene. There's numerous people we could get on. If you want anyone on as well, just if you want to come on, whoever you may be, DM me or DM Yumi or DM the map control. I've had people DM me saying, I'd love to come on at one point and speak to you about this. You need to get me on. Some people will those who have messaged me probably will never come on. No offense, but there have been a couple of people who have shown interest and people I rate or people I respect in the scene as well. So that's just get that out of the way. Obviously, we will go back to now Epiclan. So what we want to do in this starter segment is basically just give our opinions on the event, and now we'll basically just sort of talk about um, what we want to talk about now is obviously some of the standouts from the end, some things that surprise us, some things that maybe didn't surprise us. I'll let you go first, though, Yumi. What surprised you in terms of players or teams?
I suppose probably Demise. I feel like they're a team that I sort of consistently underestimate. Granted, they didn't really get that far, but they seemed a lot stronger than I had thought.
Yeah,
Um, I think as well, sort of Waterwalkers, which were a team that we sort of brought up when we did our sort of predictions and seedings. Uh, I mean, they're just like a mixed bag of players, right? And that was always the problem coming into this land. There's so many mixed bag teams, but the fact that Waterwalkers did as well as they did, I suppose, they garner a bit more respect as individuals. I can't really call. I mean, it was a team effort in the end, I suppose, to even get
yeah,
that far. But I feel that it doesn't really transfer into sort of future tournaments unless you just look at it as individuals.
Yeah, and LAN is a completely different beast to
Hmm.
ESEA Advanced, ESEA Main, ESEA Intermediate for some of these teams as well. A lot of these teams were sort of going as cores, but they had people fill in. For example, Ned's is a core, but Mr. Hoy obviously plays for now formerly Up the Medica, now Kosnica, I think is the name of the org.
Cosconia?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he played, and obviously then Shiki filled in for the Artem Dika boys, who unfortunately underperformed more than we expected. They were put into, I wouldn't say a difficult group. I don't think any of these groups were certainly a group of death. But I'll leave that because obviously I was going to get ahead of myself. I'm going to get ahead of myself. But quickly, I just want to bring up a couple of the players' statistics. So first, a player that surprised me and someone I personally know and have talked to on numerous occasions is Jack Burton. Went to a 1.40 rating through LAN, had an extraordinarily individually strong performance against CEX in a best of one in the group stage. I think it was the best of one. I believe now. I think it's either 43 kills or 47 kills they got in double overtime or single overtime against CX. They did eventually lose, but for the Medica female team, I expect they probably didn't expect to get above their own Medica team, and let alone nearly take CX to the brink, really.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of like we highlight Jack Burton, right? Like, or Jack B, as he's usually known as by alias. It's like
Yes.
that. There are obviously some players that did do quite well, but didn't go as far into the tournament, and so like that sort
Yeah,
of limited sample size can sort of inflate numbers a little bit.
that's true. Yeah,
We do have other people on the list that are sort of hovering around the same numbers with more games played, like Hype, like he's like pointed out, just not far behind him. Cryptics with sort of or Peggy, I suppose, with the best sort of consistency throughout the whole thing. So I mean, it's very difficult to just go on stats, but yeah, like there's been some really sort of standout performers thus far, and I think there were some that we were expecting, but in the same sort of capacity that we saw sort of Revelation and Waterwalkers attain, is that there wasn't really there some teams just were lacking the depth as well.
yeah. Especially when you get into that upper bracket, it becomes a lot more difficult than the group stage, and that group stage can be a stat padder. Obviously, that's not to take away from anyone who played well at this event. However, you have got to put these things into context. Jack Burton still, even with if you only include those games or whatever you want to include, that is still by any means against some of the teams he played at a pretty standout performance, and obviously
Yeah,
should
for
be
sure.
proud about what he's able to do against some good teams. You know, CX not a bad team by any means. They later went on to go as probably deep as we expected them to get into the event. Maybe could have got a couple places higher, but that is something to talk about later. Obviously, just quickly bring up Z next for the most total kills at the end, 384. I believe in the brackets number next. If you want to check any of these, make sure to check out the head admin's Twitter. That is Maro. He has all these stats, a stat document, all this released on his Twitter, which probably does a better job of explaining how well someone played than we are doing. But obviously, yeah, Znex, the highest frag, Smooya with the highest KD, 1.47. The highest ADR of the event was Thomas with 93. And I believe that that is pretty much the most relevant stats in my eyes, anyway.
I think the one that you can maybe call out is Thomas with the highest ADR, when considering that he sort of made it to the finals with his team, right?
Yeah.
That is like an incredible amount of consistency considering the sort of sample size.
Yes. Oh, thank you for posting that in chat as well. You actually makes it a lot easier. Um, yeah, and then I suppose another one was Jack Burton had the top rating win against an entry, or the top. Yeah, so he was able to shut down entries. It seems like, so well done to him. Standout performance from him at this event. And I believe that in terms of my opinions, I believe that brings me to a close. Unless you've got anything else to add as well, you.
Oh yeah, big up PKL, best entry fragger at
Yes.
LAN, 80% win rate in opening duels. Apparently incredible at the entry. So someone loves it.
Yeah, you have to fear them heads when they're going for those entries. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say about them. Neds, you know. such a fanboy, isn't that? It gets me into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that brings us to an end of sort of our opinion section. This is something that people wanted more personally from me as well, to give more of my opinions instead of just being a Yumi interview show, which is a fair, a fair criticism. But we move into seedings now. So for this event, Maru went with the reasoning for the seedings that would be 24 seeds, because the maximum capacity for the teams is 48, and halving 43 is a bit of a it makes, obviously it's a bit weird because then it goes into half points. But so you half 48, you get 24. So his reasoning for that was you have half the team seeded, pretty much as you're missing 5 teams out of the full capacity. And to me, that makes complete sense. I think it's fair to go for 24 teams seeded. They should be coming up on your screen now. So there should be the top 8 seeds of the event first. So obviously the top seed was London Esports. Again, if you look at the predictions that I had for seeding, and that was basically a joint one, some of them with me and Yumi, and we both agreed upon that London would be the top seed, just because of the organisation. It's a full 5 roster. They are doing pretty well in ESEA Advanced, EPS winners, Grosvenor winners. All this goes into the seeding. It's not just about performance, etc., etc. Recently, it's about you as an organisation, your history as a team. Are you a full 5 core? And so, yeah, I assume you agree with that being the top seed, Yumi.
Yeah, I mean, it made a lot of sense, 100%. Just you can't really guarantee the mixes are going to do too much. Obviously, you have that mix potential being seeded very highly as well. And the fact that London Slayers are in second seed as a quote unquote mix is, if you just look at it on paper and just don't understand who the players are, I guess is pretty ridiculous. But obviously, given the context of who's involved, especially that sort of core, sort of a core 3 from Endpoint, right? I suppose you could count Stanley as a part of that because he stood in for them for so long, and then Rom and Smuya as well. That's a tough one to beat. So I think
Exactly.
as far as the seeds were concerned, some of these lined up with what we talked about in terms of where we thought people were going to place. But having anything outside of London Esports as a first seed was basically a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah, in terms of what goes into seeding as well. When you think of it, it's not just a prediction for who's going to win the event. It's about consistency as a roster. Again, have you got an organisation backing you? Are you a core? And so how many is actually from the real team? Obviously, that's full 5. And then London Slayers, as you said, second. Reflex EU take that third place, with Whisk, Link, Cray, Adam Frio, and Fraser. Actually got to play them when I was as a player in my group. Took them to the brink. We lost 16-6. To the close game. It was
sure every round was difficult.
Every round there, Yumi, was the hardest battle of my life. That's all I'm gonna say. Obviously,
they must have won at least 12 1v1s. The lucky souls.
that was 16 1v1s were won by them. That's all I'm gonna say. Fraser liked to give it larger in the warm up as well. I was just dream the cast, it's going to be easy then. Fair enough. That's a fair insult. It made me laugh. It was a fun game. Obviously they get the third seed. Again, that makes sense to me. It is a core roster. They have got an org backing them going into this event as well, where it's not Dislaun, it is an organisation. I think the only add-on, because Link obviously joined the roster recently, the only add-on there will be Whisk, who is actually a previous Epiclan winner as well, which makes sense to put him up there at third place.
Yeah, and I think Whisk is only filling in for the one player, right? Like you said, this is kind of like the core 4 from Dislaun. So even if this wasn't sort of sponsored by a team, you still don't have to look at that and just be like, it's basically a team plus Whisk. So
exactly.
And he's, and like you said, Epiclan winner that carries forward.
I like the way you said that. Epiclan winner, Epic 25 winner, Whisk.
Yeah. It does carry forward towards the seedings. I imagine that also affected sort of 7.2 and below. And that Cryptics, I think, was Epic 24 winner. And obviously Surreal was I think Surreal was also a part of that Epic 24 win, if I'm not mistaken.
Who won Epic 24?
I think it was Radix and Friends.
Yeah, you're probably right then. I think so.
Yeah, Surreal was a part of that. So was Lasso. So actually core 3 for Epic 24. So
Okay, there we go. Yeah, there's the reasoning behind that as well. However, again, you've got ahead of yourself. That's what I'm going to say. Obviously, fourth place is Fierce. Again, makes sense. It's an organization. It's a core roster that play in ECA Advanced, although not having a great time in ECA Advanced. However, it's still organization, core backing them up. Final of Epiclan, four of them were in the final of Epiclan 25. That's got to put you up there as well. Obviously, just Swaggy being replaced by Carcass now. Yeah, makes sense to me. CX, fifth seed, again, makes sense. An organisation, a long-standing roster as well. The longevity of the roster and the majority of the players that have been in there have got to help them. Their Epic 25 place, I want to say semis they got up to. Did they not fall? Wait, did they not fall too fierce in the consolidation final? I believe. I want to say
CX.
Yes, Epic 25.
Yes, they did.
Yes, because I think that was the last game me and you casted together at Epic 25. I want to say. So yeah, again, longevity for the roster, organisation backing them. You can see sort of a trend of why these seeds are so high. Yep, CX 5th seed makes sense. Made absolutely no sense for me to put them at 9th if you put all that together. 6th seed as well, Revelation Gaming. Again, I can understand why they're put at that point. Their form and what they've been able to do in EPS, online in ENCA Advanced. Again, core roster, full 5, organisation backing them. It does get a bit of a draw, but again, 6th seed makes sense for them. 7th, we've got 7.2 and below. Former Epiclan winners, obviously players who have had very good careers in the UK scene through, I believe, still on that Epsilon lineup. Lazar obviously recently parted ways with Endpoint Cryptics, a long-standing member of the UK scene, a decent player as well, obviously Sliggy as well. He would have been part of Epic's 23 win, maybe? Epic 23. He was at one of the events he was playing with Smear again.
Wait, who? Sorry?
Sliggy.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's my knowledge doesn't go that far back, so
yeah. So basically, I believe he played. I think, in fact, it might have been the final against Surreal against Bulldog. I believe it was when Smoo was playing with them. Yeah, 7th seed. I can understand why they're put above the Neds. Obviously there's no core there, but because of the individual standpoints of the players and their history, I can understand them putting at 7th. For me personally, I don't know. I maybe would have swapped 7th out, but again, that's so tough when you're coming down to the top 8 seed. It gets a little, arguably gets a little bit easier when you go into the lowest, or as this is the top 8, you go to the mid 8 and the lower 8. But even then, it's probably quite difficult because there's actually not much data to put these teams apart. So it's an entirely difficult process that I probably wouldn't want to be a part of if I was a sole person doing this. So again, a shout out to Maru, who did, I think, a pretty much perfect job on the seeds. You'll see once we get into it, I think the seeding was at least fair for all these teams.
Yeah, I think the issue that people sort of presented to me, like at the event, is that like outside of like this maybe the top 8 to 12, the rest of the seedings were a bit odd. Like it is hard. I think if you just left those unseeded, it probably would have been better. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's I mean, you sort of scramble together teams that are basically mixes anyway, and just players you recognize are like active in the UK circuit. Then I suppose then you want to at least give them something going into it, but sort of outside of that top 12 seed, it was a little bit difficult to really,
because you don't know much about these teams. Is the problem. You don't know, because for those teams, you've really got to take form into example with some of these teams. For example, like a team like Exilium. Yeah, Revelation. No. If we're talking about top seeds, exactly, Revelation. But if we're going into the bottom half, teams that have had good LAN performances previously, but had unfortunate online series, etc., may put up their form into a certain event. Obviously, I think, like you were putting up Revelation example, form probably got them a higher seed. Obviously, Maru is an admin for EPS or ESL, doing the EPS series. So he gets a first-hand view really of how well Revelation are playing, beating Endpoint, etc., etc. We've been through that, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, 100%. Just having form as a factor is definitely a huge part of seeding, but
yeah,
you don't, like you said, you don't really have the data to cultivate or really use that to help the seeding past like 12 or so, because they don't usually partake in either online tournaments or they're just full mixes. So.
Or they're only in open intermediate, not those highly prestigious leagues, intermediate. It's not a bad league, not a good league. It's main sort of the where you're starting to play a little bit better, a better level. Intermediate sort of still kind of open. Obviously, 8th seed now as well. The Neds, hashtag fear the Neds. That again is a core roster that plays in EPS. I believe they are playing ESEA. I want to say you will be able to.
Yeah, they're in inters, so that's
obviously, yeah. That is
great, but,
not a great league, but I imagine they are probably higher skill level in intermediate than most of the teams that are in there. I think that is an example you could probably take into, or Maru can take into saying, yeah, Neds are probably better than most of the people in intermediate. I don't actually know what their ACA is. Hopefully I haven't just sort of put my foot in my mouth and they're not 0-10 in intermediate. But
oh yeah, they've been smashed absolutely every game. 7-2.
All right, 7-2. Yeah, that's a pretty good scoreline. They will most likely end up in at least May next season. Advance is a possibility. I believe you have to win like 3 games in intermediate, something like that. But again, the top 8 seeds, there you have it. London Esports, the London Slayers, Reflex, Fierce, CEX, Revelation, 7.2 and below, and the Neds. We now move into the middle 8 seeds, or mid 8 seeds, put on the UK CSGO website. And just the screenshots coming up on your screen are from the UK CSGO website, which made it a lot easier than having to ask Mario to send me a document for them. Let me just get them up on my screen as well. Sorry. So mid 8 seeds. So at 9th seed, we have Sensei, Scott, John, which basically is a mix between the Sensei team in Advanced and I believe Ping and Crust added on.
Yep, pretty much. And then you have then you move. I think we should sort of like accelerate this. We spent quite a lot of time talking about the top 8. So.
All right. 10th, Horus. Makes sense. Got Shane in the roster. Water Walkers as well. I would have put them personally above Horus, but again, at the end of the day, it probably didn't pay too much into the seeds and how they did in their groups, etc., etc. Again, another team that I had the pleasure of playing in a group, very close game, 16-3. So, we obviously, again, 16 1v1s that they won. It was a very tough game for them. And then we move into Demise, 12th seed. Again, we only did up to top 10. So if we're doing 24 seeds, I can agree with Demise being 12th. Up the Medica at 13. IGI had a decent LAN performance previously. Makes sense to put them that high up. Ben Price, core roster once again. Basically had disbanded before the event, but as a core roster, they were a team. The Rat Pack as well, obviously got Pulse in there, and I believe the majority of those players in Rat Pack, obviously, most of them casters or work for ESL and doing the EPS series. I believe they did decent. They were at Epic 25. I know that for a fact because they were sitting right next to people I was watching. And I think they did decent. I want to say they got pretty deep into the lower bracket, not like exceedingly well, but they did decently. But yeah, again, those seeds make sense to me. I find it hard to put anyone else in those spots. We will now move to the final 8 seeds. So you've got Goid Squad, which is Shubi, Ducky, Sempy, Transfer, Cloudy. Again, that makes sense to me. Oh, unfortunately, my Discord's just gone off. Yeah, and then Exilium, again, decent LAN performance previously. Medica under 12s. Again, some of these players have previously done well with LANs. I imagine that's what went into it. Team Sausage, the only player I know from there is Sham. Medica female, makes sense, I guess. 21. Again, when you get into this point, I don't really care about their seedings. Like, it wasn't, I don't know. It would have been, not that I don't care, it would have been extremely hard to do that for me personally, put them all in these spots. So I can't really comment. What about Cold Zero? Again, a couple good players in there. I found Jar could stop it, ones that I recognise. And then Suns Out, Guns Out. Logan obviously has played in the scene for a very long time. Dylan as well, former London Lynx player, or I believe may still play for London Lynx. Archer LV as well, the 3 names I reckon for that. And again, that's the 4th team you see on your screen. That is a Medica name, with Medica down under taking the 24th and final seed. Makes sense. I'm not going to put up a big. This person should have been seeded 20th instead of 23rd or something like that.
Because ultimately, it probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah. In terms of placements, I don't think it really did. You'll see that some of the seeds finished like 43rd at the end of the day, that's basically, that is last place, like what I think it's like 22nd to 40, but something like that anyway. Now, so yeah,
I think it's like, as far as maybe some of those seedings go, I think some of these teams were given a bit more sort of namesake. Like the fact that there's 4 Medica teams and they're all in the 24 seedings.
Yes,
Medica is a movement, to be fair, but I don't think it garners sort of the
taking 4 seed spots, especially in the 24th seed. I don't know, but again, I don't know who could have replaced them in that 24th seed.
Of course, yeah.
Like who? I don't know. Maybe some team that you've never heard of has a good LAN event and beats them, but at the end of the day, it does not matter. Seriously, the bottom 8 seeds are good for those teams to get seeded, because it means you're more likely to be able to get out of groups, but it does not pay it's not this big advantage to get seeded, really, especially at those lower seeds. If you face them, there's still a chance you can beat them. But basically, obviously attending the captain meetings, we were told there as well that HLTV could come into play past the semi-finals, and I believe it's lower bracket quarters that it ended up being. And the groups ended up being 8 groups, 43 teams, 5 groups with 5 teams, and 3 groups with 6 teams. And the top 3 groups out of each team, no matter 5 or 6, got out of groups. Even in the team groups with 5, you didn't get a bye. It was basically just play it out, and that is what ended up being the groups.
I think running the groups, like the group stage, was as good as you could get it. I think everything ran to schedule as far as the group stages went, so there wasn't anybody sort of complaining for hours on end. I think there were a few issues with servers that may have delayed things, especially those first couple of days.
Personally, yeah, it did happen to us once in a group stage game. One of our servers crashed, but I mean, and that's something I wanted to actually bring up when we were talking about, how we felt the event was run and stuff like that at the start. I thought the admin team, when they had any issue, they were approachable. Go up to the desk and you just say, we have this issue, and like, yeah, we'll sort it out. What's your team name, etc., etc. It was really easily done, sorted almost immediately with most issues. With like the servers crashing, I think it happened twice to us. When we were getting sorted into the inters bracket and stuff like that as well, we were a couple teams weren't included, but they again sorted it immediately. They were very nice about it. They answered their Discord. They were as good as an admin team can be, especially when you're running it for 43 teams with 3 people basically.
Yeah, no, I've seen how responsive they were for you guys, especially in sorting out issues. So they're very open to that sort of feedback. But from a production point of view, we may have encountered a few issues on that particular side. Maybe because the players were eating up resources. But
well, what issues did you have in terms of
just like communication? Always seemed like the biggest issue between like sort of staff, admins, and production. Obviously because we're on a balcony, we've got no sort of formal way of communicating outside of just yelling it down towards the LAN hole. We ended up getting sort of Discord groups together, and we just it took ages for us to figure out things, and that may have caused some delays. We also had a few, like, I think I'm sort of jumping ahead as we were just talking about group stages, but on the finals day, we sort of started our stream a little bit late because one of the monitors that we were using for the purpose of showing the casters what was going on in game was repurposed for the Rainbow Six final, and we never found an alternative until
it was repurposed with permission, or it was just taken.
Repurposed on purpose.
Yes, obviously. I understand that. Yeah,
but there was supposed to be an alternative provided or sourced for us, that we couldn't track down until 2 minutes before the finals or the semifinals supposed to start on the very last day. So
yeah. So
a few things that like didn't go to plan, obviously.
And from a production point of view as well, obviously previously having been part of production on numerous occasions, this happens, pretty much every Epic. And it's not something that you should get used to because it's stuff that shouldn't happen. But it is unfortunate.
It's just ironing out the creases, and especially the fact that
new hole and stuff like that. Yeah. Exactly. You take it with a pinch of salt. Unfortunately, your monitor's been nicked. You move on, get your phone up, you watch it. You try and do what you do. Obviously, you managed to get a monitor sourced. I'd gone home on the Saturday night, crying into my sheets that we hadn't done too well. I'm actually going to start tearing up.
That's unfortunate.
But as a player, though, still, even if you get grouped or whatever, you don't play well, it's still a fun event because, you're there. You can punch your teammate if he does something wrong. On numerous occasions, that nearly happened. My picture on my banner is basically me mid-telling a strat for that wasn't even like a joke. That was literally me. During that picture, I remember just saying, you know what we're doing? He's like, no. It's like, all right, Henry, I get it. I'm just going to go cast the next Epic. I'm never playing this shit again. And that's my life.
Nobody listens to me.
Nobody listens to me. Basically, from the final bit about the seedings, basically the format, what they were told during the captain's meeting as well, was that it was going to be upper and lower brackets, as per pretty much most Epics. I believe the only time I've had a different format was my first Epic, when basically they changed the format every Epic, or because they get new admins, etc., etc. But basically, Mario's been doing it now. At least 3 Epics, I want to say. Unfortunately, he's not going to be at the next one, but yeah, I think about that. And he's been doing a pretty good job, in my opinion. Oh yes, and in terms of what happened when he got out of groups, the first 2 teams in a group got to upper bracket, and the third team went lower bracket. So again, in the captain's meeting that you had to be a part of if you were playing, Mario basically outlined saying that we'd had some criticism, that it was too hard to get into the upper bracket, and etc., etc. And this is the fix that they deployed, and from what I could tell, seemed like pretty much everyone was happy with that format change. I had no problems with it myself anyway. What do you think about that format, you?
I mean, first 2 teams definitely makes a lot of sense, just because it gives you a bit more leeway. Like, you can concede one game, still end up in the upper bracket. So
yeah,
I think, like you said, it's easier, but it means like there's a sort of a better experience for players, because suddenly you're not just thrust into the lower bracket for no reason. So
exactly. I mean, that's what screwed a couple of teams at Epic 25 was they lose one game or map difference, etc., etc., and then they're into the lower bracket. So again, a good change implemented. We now look at the groups again: 5 groups, 5 teams, and 3 groups with 6 teams. That's 8 groups of 43 teams. I did the math several times because it kept confusing me. And the placements of the group. So coming up on your screen now should be Group A to C. Those are the first 3 groups, obviously A to C. In the first group, we had the first seed of London Esports with the 9th seed of Sensei Scott John. Obviously, it shows the results as well. And then in third place on that group, you had Denova Gaming, Wait, This Ain't My Bedroom, and Goid Squad. Again, there's not much to discuss about. Do we think this team should be in the group? It's basically, obviously, the seeding has decided that they should be in that group. But we'll just talk about the results of this group now, if that's okay with you, Yumi.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically, Group A, I think basically the seeds got it right, except for Goid Squad, who went 0-4 and weren't able to get anything out of that group and finish bottom, weren't able to get out. London Esports and Sensei Scott John go to the upper bracket, Denova Gaming go to the lower bracket, and Wait, This Ain't My Bedroom were eliminated into the inters bracket.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if we just talk about Group A, B, and C, the top seed from each respective group kind of just wins out.
1, 2.
So that's
to me personally, that means the seedings worked. And in Group 2 as well, it seemed it pretty much worked as well. London Slayers finished top. Yeah, exactly. London Slayers, they finished top. Horus Esports second. Exilium didn't quite make it out of groups, which again shows how hard it was to really get the sort of seeding at that level correct. We move to Group C now. Reflex, again, this is what we expected to come out of this group, and the seeding got it perfect. The 2 higher teams got into the upper bracket, the lower team got into the lower bracket. Obviously, Julius Money Crew there, fallen but not forgotten. 16-14 loss to Medica under 12s to not get out of groups. I'll never not forget that game. I will forever be etched into my nightmares. Obviously, yeah. So seeding gets out of that group, makes complete sense. Shows that the seeding for those teams has worked. Obviously, Reflex going undefeated in the group. Waterwalkers, I imagine their only defeat coming at the hands of Reflex. But that is Group A to C. Unless you've got anything else to add, Yumi.
No, that's pretty much perfect. I think like we had said, like you mentioned, sort of Goid Squad and Exilium being sort of 17th, 18th. We brought it up earlier, but like sort of seeds past 12, a little bit sort of up in the air.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think everything's sort of going to plan as far as seedings go, and testament to the methods employed by the admin team.
Exactly. Now we go to Group D, and once again the seeding comes into effect perfectly. Fierce top their group without losing a game. Demise losing only one game, and again I imagine that game was to Fierce Esports Team Sausage, managing to just get out of group with an even scoreline. Again, seeding has worked. CEX in Group E managed to top their group, Los Emigrentos. I don't know why I did that in like a Spanish accent when they're Polish, but I can't imagine Los Emigrentos is a Polish way of saying it. However, they were able to get out second in the group. They were an unknown factor, I imagine, coming into this. So it would have been quite hard to seed them. But the seeding was turned upside down in this group, with the Medica female team being the Medica. I want to say that it was one of two teams of the Medicas to get out of groups, maybe one of three. I think maybe up the Medica, the main team, was the only Medica team to get out. And this is very confusing. There was 4 Medica teams, but that 13th seed Medica team, I believe, was the only one to not get out of groups, I want to say. Obviously, we'll find out in a bit anyway. But yeah, Los Emigrentos and Medica female were able to get out. A couple of close games there for Medica female against the likes of CEX, where they possibly could have upset a seed in there, etc., etc. But the seeding, again, mostly correct. Group F, this is the first group of 6 we get to as well, with Revelation topping their group, having lost 1 game. I imagine that must have been to IGI, or maybe what about Cold Zero? I believe Jargon's in the chat. So
yes, no, it was What About Cold Zero. I remember.
Okay.
Because apparently Jargon's a talent, and
they
were just all having life games. According to Russ from over the table, they're all having life games. So that's why they didn't end up with a clean sheet.
I can't imagine that was the most friendly way of putting over who had a good game.
I mean, it's all in good fun.
Yeah, of course, and obviously they. You may see that they're pretty much all on equal points. The round difference, where Revelation 16-1, 16-2, all these teams would have helped them get to the top of that group. IGI finishing in second place. Again, seeding has worked. You know, it comes down to round difference, but it doesn't really matter. That's the seeding. It's worked. And then obviously, unfortunately, the 3 teams at the bottom there have fallen, all unseeded teams. And that is Group D, E, and F, if that's okay with you. Anything else to add?
All right. No, that's perfect.
Perfect. Groups G and H, these are the final 2 groups. And again, you know, Maru's a genius, apparently. He seems to get this group right as well, with 7.2 and below being the 7th seed. They managed to get out without losing a game. Ben Price, second, losing 1 game, and then the 3rd seed losing 2 games, but still getting out. You know, there's nothing really to comment about these groups. That basically the seeding's worked, and well done. That's what you want to see at the end of the groups. Mm-hmm. You want to see that the seeding has worked properly. And yeah, so this brings me to my point earlier. If we look at Group H, Medica, the main team was the only one not to get out of groups. So Medica under 12s got out of 3rd, Medica female got out of 3rd, and obviously Medica under got out of 3rd as well. Ned's able to top their group without a loss. You know, pretty much expected with the group they had. I don't think we would have seen, maybe to Rat Pack, but yeah, Rat Pack losing 1 game, and again Medica down under losing 2, which secured their 3rd place, and that means we now come to our upper bracket, Yumi, which would have been informed by the top 2 teams out of each group. Yeah. So obviously, Yumi, you were following the action throughout, so I'll let you talk about this upper bracket initially.
I mean, obviously, we didn't get to sort of cast everything.
Yeah, that would have been a very difficult task to do, I imagine.
Yeah, it would have been extremely difficult to do, but I mean, the results are kind of as you expect. You sort of you have London sort of taking their first round, Neds as well actually falling. I don't. It's a little bit sort of hard to see some of the teams' names.
Sensei Scott
Uh,
John, that is.
I see.
It did take me a second to figure out as well. It's like, who is that? But then I saw the 9 next to their name, which indicates they were
Yeah,
9th
of
seed.
course, ninth seed, of course. Then you have Fierce going up against CX. CX winning things out. I think the Fierce lineup as a whole has sort of seemed like it. Obviously, they haven't been around for too long, but they're seeming like a bit of a shell of their former selves.
Yeah.
Like that sort of honeymoon period when they first came onto the scene. That was when they were at their sort of peak performance. But now things are seeming a little bit shaky, and I think it reflected in some of the performances they put up. Obviously, CEX weren't the strongest team at this event either. They
Nope.
had a couple of close calls in the groups, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Obviously, even in the upper bracket against Demise, they had a close game. I believe the last map, I want to say, went to 16-14, I believe. Not quite sure. And obviously, Fierce beating out Lost Emigrants as well. I think we expected that. But CX and Fierce, I've noticed, seem to face each other quite a lot. And it's sort of a coin flip about who wins. I believe CX have the majority of the wins against them. I want to say they faced 4 times. One at Epic 25 in the upper bracket, or the lower bracket consolidation final, which Fierce won. Then I want to say, I imagine they faced each other more, but the notable times to me were at EPS. To get to the EPS final, CX managed to beat Fierce there. And then again at the most recent EPS. Oh, no, not the most. Was it the most recent EPS? They played online in Nuke, I want to say, and that Fierce won. Something like that, anyway. I won't dwell on that too much. But again, CX, the 5th seed against the 4th seed. Again, those are always going to be close games. CX managed to take it. We then moved to London Slayer versus Ben Price. I mean, what do you expect? London Slayer are obviously going to take that. Ben Price aren't a bad team, but London Slayer are just infinitely better. And then K-Man Lil D, is that 7.2? I believe
7.2.
K-Man is, yes. Yeah. So that's 7.2 and below. Yes. And then they faced Horace in that upper bracket. I want to say that was a decently close. I believe Shaney was like popping off in that series. I think from what I saw, he was having a couple of good games, which is what you would expect. I mean, he's on equal skill level to a majority of these players, or at least just a little bit below or a little bit above, depending on who you're talking about. But then we move on to Reflex versus IGI. Reflex beat IGI again. Again, that makes sense. Revelation versus Water Walkers, a close series. It seems to won, but Revelation come out on top and knock the Water Walkers into that lower bracket again. The majority of the seedings seems to have won out in most of these games, 3 or 4 examples. But then obviously we talked about it already. London beat Sensei Scott John, CX beat Fierce, London Slayer beat 7.2 and below, and they've actually had a map taken off them there. I want to say that was one of 3 maps taken off them the entire event. I believe.
Well, from London Slayers.
Yes, that was because they had one taken off in the upper bracket final and then the final, I think, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, they topped their group without continuing a game, right? So they had 2 losses throughout the whole event, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, I think about that anyway. And then Reflex able to beat out Revelation. From what I could tell as well. Again, this is going on while I was at the event playing in the Inters bracket, so I wasn't able to keep up as much as maybe Yumi was. But I believe again, even though 2-1 doesn't always mean it was a close series, it could be 2 16-0s on the maps they won. From what I can tell, it was a pretty close series, and Revelation were just beaten out by the 3rd seed Reflex.
Yeah, I believe. I think Jamie and Dweg were casting this one, so I'd sort of seen from the sidelines. But yeah, it seemed like there are quite a few sort of extremely close moments. As a whole, I think Revelation. We'd mentioned it when we were sort of doing our predictions. They definitely are a team that are on the up and up.
Exactly.
I think this LAN performance, especially, it sort of brought out the best in some of the players. I actually had quite a few questions about. Like, I'm quite friendly with Russ and Impact, and I wasn't really sure about their consistency coming into the event. But Impact was he was
having impact, was he? Was he having impact? Yeah, I mean, I went over and said hello, obviously, to Revelation guys. Had a few chats with Russ about how his games were going, and it basically was, yeah, we just beat him 16-2. I was like, all right, fair enough. That's what you expect out of these teams at a group stage. I think I was behind them for a couple of their upper bracket games, maybe. Well, we were in sort of our intermission bit, waiting for it to go get food or whatever. And from what I could see, you know, I don't think they outdid my personal expectation. I thought they would do pretty good, maybe just a little bit in terms of individuals. Again, the consistency on LAN was something that I was thinking about in my head as well. Can they bring that out? It's one thing to be good online, but when people are shouting at you, "Woo, you're shit" or whatever, that does play into someone's mind. And I believe it's Hawk saying, for a first LAN as a team, I'm happy that we were able to bring out, the best in us, and hopefully we just keep on improving.
Yeah, of course, we can't sort of I guess neglect to say that sort of Reflex were about as impressive as you'd expect, right? The sort of caliber
Yes,
of the
absolutely.
players. I think when we'd seen Fraser at Epic 25, I think he was playing with Emmy Hoy.
He was playing on the Lifts question mark team.
Yes, that's the
I
one.
can't remember who was in it, but I think you're right. It was like Hoy, Emmy, and they were. In fact, they knocked out Buzzkill in the lower bracket, didn't they, in the
Yeah.
first round?
That
So
that goes back to
maybe
that sort of seeding issue we were talking about, where like you
exactly.
lose one game in the groups and then suddenly you're about to get eliminated.
Didn't Buzzkill lost out on round difference as well because they got 16-9 on cash by Dexy's team. In fact, I believe was that storyline. Yeah,
It wasn't
so
quite demise at the time, but I think
it was like a mix. Yeah.
Capacity.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Obviously, London Slayer then beat out Reflex as number 2 seed, being number 3. London expectedly beat out CX, and this is the upper bracket final we ultimately expected, I believe. And we will get into the lower bracket in a bit as well. We just wanted them. Obviously, most of these teams will end up in the lower bracket eventually anyway, so it'd be a bit weird going back and forth. But London versus London Slayer, what was this initial series like,
I mean, it was the final you were expecting coming into the event, and we knew that, like, going straight into it. Like, when we were sort of like presenting this game, we were just like, this is exactly what you would hope for coming into this event, and we got this for the first time, and it was a close series all the way through. It was I mean, there were a few moments where I think London certainly sort of crumbled under the pressure, I feel like. There's certainly a lot of intimidating presence on the side of London Slayers.
Yeah,
Especially
with that screech from
yeah.
Smee. I mean, I could hear it when I'm playing. Like, that is mental mind games.
We started kind of focusing. We had a secondary camera on the caster desk. We started kind of focusing on that team because obviously they were doing one of the best in the tournaments, and I imagine you would have been able to hear the tiny, like, even though the microphones are really good at drowning out background noise, you would have still heard the squeal.
It's so high pitched. I was
know.
so surprised about how I've heard it before, but for some reason, when you're playing, it feels different. I'm not even playing against them. Like, Smee, stop. It's when you're not playing, or even when you're playing, not playing against them. Sometimes you just have to basically streaming the entire event. You basically just have to stop for a second and laugh because it was just funny, and it gets, especially when you're playing against that. That must be so frustrating to hit. You just want to shut that up. And I was speaking to a couple of people who were debating to me whether they could get a higher pitch, and I don't think anyone could get a higher. But Smooth's got that land scream down to perfection, I believe.
Yeah, but sort of going back to the point before we sort of dive off topic to the Smooya squeal train. I just that whole event seemed to be. I mean, just Thomas was unreal. He was such a difference maker in so many of those games, and I mean, it sort of reflects in his stats. He had ridiculous amount of ADR considering
93. 93 across what must have been 16 or something like maps, something like.
Yeah, he was crisp. He was feeling. I think like all the players really showed up when they needed to for the side of London Slayers. I think London as well. They knew that was going to be a huge problem for them going in, but I think what was most surprising about London Slayers is how structured they were playing. Being this sort of mix with a core, but obviously Smooya coming from big as well. I feel like that style fit them really well. The fact that they didn't just go around rushing, trying to out-aim their opponents, especially against a team like London. They knew they probably wouldn't be able to get away with it. And
Exactly.
I was very impressed by how neatly they wrapped everything together.
Yeah, and especially when you do have the confidence behind you to play the structured setup, but you also have the confidence that you could probably win the Angels if you get into the setup. If you're able to outplay your opponent and then take the Angels, you can win that. If they use their utility effectively, they're able to get themselves underside. I believe Train was played, I want to say, both in the upper bracket final and in the actual final. I believe.
I think one was so the upper bracket final. I believe Dust 2 was the decider.
Okay.
And then in the lower bracket or in the grand finals, it was. I don't believe Dust 2 was a part of it.
No, so you're right. The first 3 maps for the upper bracket final were Overpass, which London Slayers won, then Mirage, which London won, and then Dust 2. Yeah, and then I believe it was Train in the final. But yeah, basically that is pretty much the upper bracket. Maybe in the semi-finals, etc. Again, from the semi-finals of the upper bracket, that was on HLTV, which you saw the stream go up to I want to say 4,000 viewers peak. I believe in the upper bracket or semi-final. It was a weird game that I got it. I think it was the Reflex game against London Slayers.
Yes, I believe so.
Which had a 4,000 viewer peak, which is great for the stream. Great to see that many people tuning in to watch UKCS. I saw the chat. I had to click off the chat pretty much immediately. UKCS. Exactly.
There were so many Russian chats.
That's what I noticed. I noticed that as well. I was like, why are there so many Russians in here? I think it's because I believe the games are available to be bet on. If they're on HLTV, I believe you can bet on them.
Yep.
I think. In fact, I
think I spoke to you, or I spoke to a few players, sort of about obviously not endorsing it anyway, but the betting odds for the London versus London esports, or London Slayers versus London esports game were unreal in the upper bracket final. It was like 7 to 2, or like 2 to 7 or something ratio on London esports to lose, because London Slayers obviously have Smooya in the mix, right?
Exactly.
But
yeah.
The majority of bettors don't sort of understand the UK scene.
Yes. Exactly,
you could see all these Russian chatters freaking out in the chat, like, "Oh no, they're throwing! It's so close! Why is it so close?"
That is the life of a caster, though. You start casting tier 2, tier 3 European CS, and you see that stuff a lot. Oh my god, caster, why are they throwing? Stuff like that. I don't know. They're not throwing.
Tell them to play serious.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that, and I think it was Whitey put 700. I think it was in the grand final. Put £700 on London to win. I think because I think the odds were so good. I think maybe it might have been less than that. But it was
upper bracket finals. Maybe I don't know about the sort of grand finals.
Yeah, whatever bet he put on, it was a lot of money, and he lost.
Jamie shouted I'm on stream, so you know.
Fair enough. Then.
Like someone's lost a lot of money on that game. You know who you.
There we go. We now get the lower bracket coming up on your screen, and that will be and that will be in 2 screenshots. Basically, what will come up on your screen initially is up until the quarterfinals, I believe, because it couldn't all fit on the screen because the lower bracket is extensive, large, takes forever, and basically all the teams are playing throughout the night on that. So let me get the lower bracket matchups on my screen. Okay, yep. So Water Walkers beat De Novo. They move on. Medica. I'm not sure which Medica that team is. I think that was the under 12s.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
No, that's Medica Down Under. It's Medica Down Under.
Okay, so they beat IGA, then lost to Water Walkers. Horus beat Sottage. The Medica female beat Ben Price. A bit of a seeding upset, I suppose, there. Horus then beat up the Medica female, which made sense. Demise beat Smiley. Lost Immigrants. Immigrantus beat Sogo. Sun Out, Gun Out, I think the team was. That's Logan. Yeah. And then Neds beat up the Medica under 12s, and then Calor beat Rat Pack. Water Walkers obviously beat Medica. Horus beat female. Demise, after getting knocked out of whatever that would be, would beat Los Emigrantos. Neds beat Carlo, and then Revelation beat Neds. K-Man or 7.2 and below beat Demise. Fierce beat Horus. and Water Walkers beat Sensei Scott John again. A little bit of a seeding upset, I suppose. Not by obviously only by 2 places.
The Kerala one as well, I suppose.
Oh yes,
as well.
Yeah, 22. Yeah, you're right. Water Walkers beat Fierce, which is certainly unexpected. That knocks Fierce out of the tournament as well. And in my opinion, a disappointing placement for the Fierce side.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of mentioned it earlier. I suppose maybe.
I've seen. Yeah, exactly.
You're going home. Cypher, what a guy. Obviously, like I mentioned it earlier, sort of trying to preface that Fears just don't seem as comfortable as they once were when they first came out. I mean, losing to the likes of Water Walkers, obviously, much love for some of the players on that team, but I mean, realistically, Fears should be able to overcome that.
Yeah,
so it's sort of indicative of, I guess, maybe not being able to implement all of the changes they would have made since the removal of Swaggy and that sort of like shifting. They were a core 3 and they kept sort of shifting players, and Capis comes back and Swaggy leaves. And
the tongue then goes after being there for like okay. Revelation then beat 7.2 and below. I can't say personally that was an upset, but you know, that's where I would have put 7.2 and below. I think that's probably fair going into this event. I believe I had them at sort of 5th, so maybe I would expect them to get to the next round, but when you're putting them up against a team like Revelation, that's a fair matchup. Revelation fairly win that one out, and basically that is the lower bracket, except for the next one. We have, I believe, 2 more matches, I want to say, in the lower bracket.
The semi and the final, I believe.
Yes, which saw... I might have missed something, actually. Because where?
Oh no, because we're missing the lower bracket quarters, I believe.
Yes. So the lower bracket quarters, I believe, would have been. Was it Revelation versus CX? Sorry, I'll get it up on my so I can leave. I forgot to screenshot that. That's my bad. I knew something would go wrong when I was in a rush. Elimination stage, lower bracket.
It was CX versus Water Walkers.
Yes, and
Reflex versus
Revelation. And again, this is the matchup from the upper bracket. Reflex managed to beat out Revelation again, securing their 3rd seed, showing that made sense. And then CEX beat Water Walkers as well, which I believe was an incredibly close series. I know it was only 2-0. Yeah. I think it was like, I want to say, I think the last match was
double OT. I think. Okay. Or it might have been single OT. I remember specifically. I think Water Walkers had a pretty big lead, or at least sizable enough to call it a choke.
Oh, okay. I see. And Adam's just put in chat, I remember reading this on Twitter. I think the bracket should have been reversed, apparently. So it shouldn't have been.
It shouldn't have been
because Reflex, right? Yes, because Reflex had already played Revelation, so the bracket should have been reversed. Maybe could have thrown up an upset or 2, but unfortunately the bracket's been played out. However, that did mean Revelation were eliminated in a spot. I think that's fair. Maybe they could have made it to the semi-final if they'd played CX or if they played Walkers. But the bracket's been played out. It's over now. CX though, again, I think this matchup showed that they weren't as confident as they've had been at previous lands. Going into this, they'd had a couple close matchups throughout the event, and then they go on. We can show the screenshot now; it should be up already. But CX versus Reflex. Reflex again, showing why they are the 3rd seed and beating CX 2-1, which puts them into the lower bracket final or the consolidation final, which gets you into the grand final, and that meant that London faced off against Reflex. And from what I can see from the 2-1, I think it was a decently close series. I think London were pretty confident on their maps, but again, Reflex placed exactly where their seed put them.
Yeah.
Again, it shows how good the seeds really were. Where CX are placed as well, that's 5th. Sort of quarterfinals is 5th to 6th anyway, or 5th to whatever it is. But all in all, that bracket makes sense to me. I don't think there was too many upsets, especially in this stage of the lower bracket.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because in that sort of lower bracket finals, you have London versus Reflex, and it was something like it was a huge performance from Reflex. I think on the first map, I think it was something like 16-4, 16-3.
They won 16-3 on the first map, yes.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, out of 9130 plus 15, ADR of 124 across that map. Link not far behind as well. Cray showing up as well. Whisk having a good game. Frazier not doing too good, but when you're winning 16-3, there's always going to be someone who's not quite positive or someone who's taken all the firepower away from London and he's just getting it shot straight at his head.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't think London are a team that it's not like they hate hate Mirage, right? So
Mirage is not. I'm pretty sure that's the map they won against London Slayers, wasn't it?
that's what I'm
Yes,
thinking.
yes, yeah. They won. That was the map. The only map they won against London Slayers was Mirage 16-8, which is a pretty confident win against them. So I'm not sure what happened there, but a confident performance by Reflex. But the next two maps, 16-6 for London on Inferno, Dust 2 16-9 as well. I think it was a good mental mental strongness to come back after getting decimated on a first map like that. That was Reflex's map pick as well, but you certainly wouldn't expect it to be an absolute blowout. But again,
of course, as well, it was played in the morning, right? So the lower bracket final. I think Reflex had to stay awake for quite a long time playing out their last games because of how late everything was running the previous day.
That was a few complaints I had from a few people who weren't playing, didn't want to play like a lower bracket or didn't want to play an inter game or didn't want because it was getting so late, they were so tired. As Adam just put in the chat, they just wanted to go home. Like it gets to a point there. People expected coming into this event that's probably what would happen. But it doesn't mean they didn't play best or etc. etc. It probably just means they're going to be a little bit tired getting up that early, and it meant they were just having to go home. Trying to go home as quickly as they could by dominating on that first map, and then obviously it went to the full 3 maps. But it was quite convincing for London there, and that pretty much brings us to the final now. Yeah,
the rematch
that we expected to happen. This is the final. You said was almost a certainty during our preview of this event. We said we couldn't see anyone else taking that final spot. Well, realistically, obviously it was always possible, but I mean, I'm not sure. Were you casting the final? You?
I do not believe so. I was indeed Dweg and Jamie, I believe, to finish things off.
Okay, so yeah. I mean, either way, I imagine you had a first row seat.
There was some. I mean, it was a really good game to watch. I think one of the issues that you have is that the sort of X factor of not really knowing what your opponent was doing, and I think as well, London weren't really playing their best on the day. Obviously, starting the day off pretty rough, having to play 2 series in a row as well.
Yeah,
is a little bit rough. So I think some of that has to factor in, but at the same time, there's also the way in which the final was conducted, of course, because it wasn't a best of 5 as it is typically tradition at Epic.
Yeah, I mean, for the past I mean, at least 4 epics, I think, it's all been best of 5 final.
Yeah, so a bit of a different format. Instead of having a map advantage, you have a map or like a ban advantage. So London Slayers get to basically pick their first map for free.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay, I see that. I was wondering that actually. So that was the advantage given for the upper bracket, was it?
Yeah. Okay. And so instead of that, you have this sort of like weird veto system that may have also sort of factored in, right? London Slayers take the first map 16-11, so it's a bit close. But then you move into maps where they're a bit more familiar on London answer back, and then it's a close. All the score lines across all 3 maps were fairly close, and I imagine it would have come down to, obviously, if I remembered specifics, it would be a bit easier to explain. But sort of I imagine there would have been multiple reset opportunities. I think there were a couple of really clutch moments that came out as well for the London Slayers, especially on Overpass, if I'm not mistaken. So if you sort of take some of those away, maybe it's an overtime game altogether. But 2 chances to take down the London Slayers, and they couldn't find a victory.
Yeah, they were not the strongest side. Obviously, on your screens, you can on the screen you can see the stats. A particularly standout performance considering they lost 2-1. Fry, sorry. Plus 17, 83 ADR. Eccles obviously didn't go positive in terms of KD, but still 82 ADR across 3 maps in which he lost 2 of them. It was 16-11 on the first map to London Slayers in their map pick being Train. Obviously, being able to pick that straight up gives them that advantage. Inferno, then, 16-8. Seems the map that I believe London have played quite a few times, or at least a couple of times in advanced. So clearly have confidence on that. 16-8. And then, sorry.
Yeah, I do remember one thing about Overpass is that Rom's a talent.
Okay, well, let's.
That,
yeah, 29-16. Yeah, he went. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
he didn't have a great.
I remember seeing it in the chat. People were like, "Oh, is Rom cheating again, or is he got FIFA installed on his PC?" You know, like.
Of course, yeah. Obviously, with his Face It ban, which alleged he cheat, we don't know. Don't know what the.
We don't know specifics. We're not going to throw any accusations out. Just
exactly.
There was a bit of fun had in the chat, and I do remember that specifically.
Yeah, so he had a decent train. Again, didn't go positive in terms of KD, but when you have 97 ADR, that matters a little bit more that you're getting damage done. Especially in a map like you win, it's clear you're getting the damage. It just means maybe you got a lot of assists or etc. etc. There's plenty of reasons. And then unfortunately, what sort of dampened his performance in terms of overall was he had a pretty poor Inferno. Again, I think he was the second highest in terms of ADR, but his KD wasn't great. His rating was the lowest on the team, but again, brings it way back on Overpass, 29-16, 94 ADR, which brings his ADR up to 88 across 3 maps in the final. He is arguably the player you would have expected to perform the worst overall, not because he's a bad player by any means, but because you look at those players
as well.
Exactly, he's not playing actively at the level some of these players are playing at, but maybe this will convince him to try and go for some sort of comeback, possibly. I imagine his Phase It ban probably expiring soon. I don't know when, but
I don't know about that one. I feel like that's probably still another year out.
What year did he get banned? I thought it was 2016.
I thought it was just last year.
Maybe you're right.
Or like late, or at least like late 2017. Because
I think I'm pretty sure you're right. I want to say. I can't actually find his account right now, but I imagine he's probably at the minimum. I believe probably 2020. I think it was like early 2018.
Yeah, it's early 2018. So he made a statement March 6th,
2018. Okay. Yes, so, and I believe those bans are 2 years each. They are now permanent, actually, on Face It. So,
but if you have a ban that has a duration,
you are fine. Yes, it's if you get banned from now, they are permanent. Basically, brings us to the end. That is the end of Epiclan 26 and a standout event in terms of the previous Epiclans with the hall changes, added players, added teams, and a drama-filled event. Before and after. I won't comment anymore, but obviously, people like to start stuff, which is unfortunate. But I thought it was going to be a drama-free LAN. I get home and I look at Twitter, and it just all kicks off. It all kicks off.
Oh god, that whole situation is so ridiculous.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's not really our place to say, right? So.
Exactly. I don't want to go too into it, but obviously, now, just for the final review of this, we just have a quick look at our predictions. So, Fraser, if you just bring up my prediction screen on the actual onto the screen, and I will get up my predictions in front of me, and we can obviously have a little look, see if we got that correct, or see if I got that correct, I suppose. So basically,
so I'm looking at it myself. You got like the first.
I got the first 3.
You got the first 3, 100%.
So obviously that's London Slayers, London Reflex with my top 3, and those ended up being the top 3. And I'll get the final standings. We'll show the final standings after the predictions for both of us as well.
We should probably just ignore the expected seeding things. Like we talked about that off stream, and we've we probably can sort of say like, maybe we should have put more thought into this.
Yes, exactly right. 4th place ended up being CEX, but I had Fierce for my prediction. obviously not like too far off, but they had a pretty poor performance in relative to how we expected them to do. So unfortunately, they were actually going to finish 7th to 8th, and in 5th to 6th place, the first 5th to 6th was Revelation. I had them in 6th place, so technically, I mean, you can't argue who's 5th and who's 6th because it's 5th to 6th, because they obviously finish in the same places. Waterwalkers, I had 9th place, and again, a standout event for them. They seem to perform well. It is a mix. I'm not sure if the team is forming together. I know Cypher's still playing with his other team, so maybe the core is doing something. I'm not quite sure at the moment. But they finished 5th to 6th after a good event for them. 7th to 8th for Fierce. I had them at 5th again. Not exactly where I would have liked to see them, considering who you see in that roster. Unfortunately, not the greatest event. 7.2 and below. I had them at 5th place. Maybe rating them a bit too highly, but still, again, not too far off. But 7th to 8th, I believe you had them at 7th, so I think you would have got that one correct. And then 9th to 12th, obviously, I had Waterwalkers and Horus in my 9th and 10th because we did up to 10. And they had Sensei Scott John at the 9th seed, and they managed, it's not he, they managed to finish at 9th to 12th as well, which shows that their seeding work. Horus at 10th place again shows that their seeding works. Demise, obviously, we didn't go past 10, but that is the final for the top standings, 1st to 12th, basically. Demise 9th to 12th, and Ned's 9th to 12th as well, which basically, there's actually an error. Oh, no. Okay, sorry, it's my eyes. With my 4 eyes, I wasn't able to see something. But, yeah. So, basically, the seeding, pretty much correct.
And a lot of predictions pretty accurate. I think if we sort of look at mine as well.
Yeah.
Like, I obviously copped out a little bit. So 3rd to 5th, they're all interchangeable. But it ended up being that they all sort of slot into that position. I think when you start to go further down the list, like Fierce and 7.2, I was happy that those went their way. Obviously a bit disappointed in the Neds, thought they could have put up a better performance, but they had, I think as well, the game that they got eliminated in because they were put down to the lower brackets. They had to,
so it was a battle anyway. And they finished within their seed, which is fair enough. Oh, sorry, no, they finished one above in terms of placement from their seed. So for their seed to be correct, it would have been 7th to 8th. But they were just a little bit unlucky.
Of course,
close by.
EPS. I mean, the EPS boys, intermediate. Inconsistency.
Those are two quite big gaps, really. Intermediate and then EP. Not a bad performance, not as good as we would have liked to see in the Neds.
Yeah, of course, because their first epic together. I mean, it wasn't really as stacked a competition, but they've impressed quite a lot of people. But this just obviously a pretty rough event altogether. And I had the same with you in Horus and Waterwalkers being 9th and 10th. So very surprised by Waterwalkers, by how well that they were able to sort of just come together. And some of the, I don't know if you'd seen some of the clips that came out from individuals on that team, but some of the shots that were hit were just like ridiculous.
I saw some of Cypher's. But I'm gonna have to go back and see some of the frags that people.
I maintain Cypher great, gifted mechanically, but he needs the experience and time to cultivate.
No. Let me put this bluntly. He is an idiot. He is an idiot in every sense of the form, and I hope he's watching. I love him really. Like, he is my prediction for someone who can really reach the top of the scene. What needs to happen is obviously the development in what you were saying, which was correct. He's not actually an idiot, but he is an idiot. As a friend, I can say that he is an idiot. I've worked with him before as well, as a coach, and he wasn't stupid. He's not an idiot in terms of when it comes to in-game. He does need that experience, though, like you said. He needs to work on that, and just hopefully when he starts rising up the scene, and stuff doesn't develop an ego or stuff like that. He just stays little old 4'5" Cypher, being himself, and hopefully fragging as well, but this time with the mechanics plus the brain power to get into that. But that is our predictions compared. As you can see on Yumi's one, again, we're both pretty much exactly the same in terms of our predictions. One team was a place off, but if we just get the final standings actually come up on your screen, that will break down the prize pool and the and basically where everyone else finished, so you can see it physically.
That should be us pretty much. I mean, I don't know that we have too many more things to talk about Epic related.
No, that is pretty much in terms of what we have for pictures and screenshots, etc., etc. That is pretty much it. But yeah, that's the final standings on your screen. Obviously, London Slayers able to get £2,700 and tickets to the next Epic 27. London Esports £1,450. Discounted Epic 27 tickets. All I'm saying, Cypher, is you can give it a large if you want, but I'll be having my meal deal back next time. That's all I'm saying. Reflex £850 as well, plus discounted tickets, and CX £250 plus discounted tickets. Jack, we've already talked about that, so
yeah, we did bring it up.
So don't try and come in here and do that. And then
check the VOD. The evidence is there.
There is evidence of us talking about it, but obviously this is the largest prize pool that an Epic CS:GO tournament has had. And you know, that's a fair amount of money being handed out there, and pretty much covers the costs for, you know, at least the tickets for Epic, most of it anyway.
Yeah, one of the mainline sponsors for obviously the upcoming season of the Grosvenor CS:GO Championship.
Yes, I've got yeah,
contributed to the prize pool, as did I believe it wasn't Sunny Broadband.
It was Fastos. That's it exactly. And you
still have no idea
who
who Sunny Broadband are, but
nope,
Fastos,
never heard of them again.
I've heard of Fastos before, so at least there's something there.
There's something there at least. And then just finally for the next screenshot, which shows 13th to 43rd, and that's just show you where all the seeds finished up. A few of the seeds didn't go where expected. I believe, Shuby, you'll be seeing your team up in at least, I want to say, something to 43rd. I want to say. Maybe that's toxic, but considering you were 17th seed, I can't imagine that was expected out of you guys, which is unfortunate. But yeah,
say anything, but I mean,
it might not have even been that. No, it was them. It was them. 33rd to 43rd, the 17th seed, and obviously Medica down under. Medica female are getting past their seeds again. What about Godzilla getting past their seeds? IGI getting further back than they were expected. Team Sausage about where they were expected. Ben Price not where they were expected. Should have done better possibly in the lower bracket. Smiley Popcorn weren't even seeded, so not a bad run for them. Suns Out Guns Out again, pretty much correct seeding. Medica under 12s, correct. Rat Pack a little bit below where they should have been, but not by too much. And then obviously we see Exilium 25th to 32nd in 18th seed, and 33rd to 43rd we see the God Squad, who were the 17th seed, and Uplantica, who were the 13th seed, not finishing exactly where they should have been. Honestly, take it off the screen, put it to the back screen. Shuby doesn't want to see that. We can't do that to him.
No, but I think that's us. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's about everything I have to sort of say about Epic as well. It's very, very, like, obviously hugely different event size and everything. It was a great sort of first experience in that new venue, and
absolutely,
I hope that was reflected in like the player engagement and sort of
absolutely
everything.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, it was a super fun event. And just one quick thing: make sure you guys sign up for these Grosvenor events. You know, you could get so much out of it. It's more LAN experience. You know, it's cheap. It's cheap compared to Epic, and you get PCs provided. You know, there's one going in Manchester soon. Get involved in that stuff. The finals seem to be a good event last time around as well. Of course, we shouted out Mario.
By the way.
Not even sponsored. But maybe I'll give a message to John. You know, you have to compensate us for saying this.
Oh Lord, please no.
But yeah, again, hope everyone did have a good Epic 26. But that is it from me and Yumi here. This will be going up on YouTube as well if you're catching the end of the VOD. So make sure to keep an eye out on the Twitter. Make sure to follow me and Yumi as well on Twitter at Rory Rogue at Yumi TV, and make sure to follow our producer who done a fantastic job. And I don't have to have my zoomed in face on my second screen trying to fix that out. So make sure to follow him at Frozen Fraser. Make sure to follow Map Control at Map Control CS as well. Obviously, soon, guys, we'll be bringing up some guests, hopefully, maybe not next episode, but certainly going to be something in our path. And thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.